He said 3 times in my medical history I'd had major upheavals because I ignored the signals when they first came. Acute asthma, a nervous breakdown, a serious stomach complaint. He felt all 3 were connected to anger. You get all of the shit, none of the glory, and you spend a lot of the time taking seriously people you despise. You wouldn't be human if it didn't make you angry.
Tony Blair's official spokesman, Alastair Campbell, has come under renewed attack from the Conservatives for giving what they say was misleading and deliberately false.
The Prime Minister's Chief Press Secretary, Alastair Campbell, will appear before a committee of MPs tomorrow to face questions on his role and his relationship with Tony Blair. He's been accused of reprimanding ministers, flouting his civil service status and misleading journalists.
The build-up had been pretty steady, and clearly the media were hoping for some big explosion. TB called me up to the flat. He said he hadn't realised how big this thing was being built up. He said, just stay calm and be polite at all times. Be as greasy as you like.
What you said was, I've got it here, I don't know whether you will say you didn't say this, I can certainly say that it's balls that the Prime Minister intervened over some deal with Murdoch. That's crap. Did you say that?
I may well have said that. There was a strong element of it being showbiz, and Rodri Morgan, the chairman, was loving the fact his committee was getting all this attention.
Are you, as it were, more important now than some ministers?
Well, I'm not. In terms of anything that I would say to a minister, it is not me that is speaking, it is the spokesman of the Prime Minister. I didn't feel the Tories had worked through their questions rigorously.
And I would suggest that
they were looking to get coverage for their questions rather than probe properly on the answers.
you have a duty to stamp this out. What are you doing about it?
Well, I can be responsible for what I say. I can be responsible for the attempts to coordinate government activity. I cannot, much as you might like to give me superhuman powers, be responsible for every word that is uttered by every person in this building.
This was an effective performance of the sort that Mr. Campbell would hope that ministers would produce. The Tories failed to draw a line.
I got a good press out of yesterday, both news and sketch-wise, with a general feeling I'd won it hands down. Now the media obsessed with itself line was made flesh with the Sun's attack on TB as the most dangerous man in Britain, running as the second news item on the BBC.
Tony Blair's told MPs he won't be swayed by an article in the Sun newspaper.
These people were never happier than when talking about themselves.
European currency. The Sun, which backed Labour at the general election, accused the Prime Minister of being determined to scrap the pound with disastrous consequences for the economy.
A cabinet reshuffle is planned to clear the air and rebalance the government by removing Harriet Harman and some of Gordon Brown's allies.
By the end of today, the Prime Minister will have all his ministers exactly where he wants them. They're still waiting to hear the news.
We were pressing TB to be bold, but he said, I'm just telling you, there is a case to be cautious if it all ends up with Gordon offside. He said with Peter and others in, 4 out, you are talking a big reshuffle, and I do not want a war with Gordon. I hate reshuffles, he said. You just have to steel yourself, but they're horrible.
Blair's decision to bring Mandelson into the cabinet is risky. He's a controversial figure, and the Chancellor doesn't trust him.
Tony spoke to Peter and said he wanted him to meet Gordon tonight. He said if they didn't work together, he would have to take drastic action because he was not prepared to let them bring the whole show down. He also agreed I could brief that he had told Peter he had to knuckle down and do a proper job properly.
His appointment as Trade and Industry Secretary was a milestone for Mr. Mandelson.
Just 6 months later, Mandelson is in trouble. A book written by a Gordon Brown supporting journalist reveals that he borrowed £373,000 from millionaire Treasury Minister Geoffrey Robinson to buy a house, and his department is now investigating Robinson's business affairs.
Tony wavered between anger and exasperation. I hate this. I cannot believe this. The Tories were murderous for it. Yet, when I spoke to Peter, he couldn't see it, or at least pretended not to. It was a loan between old friends who go back a long way.
I've done no wrong, and therefore I shall be continuing in my job.
The opposition has said he should resign, but Downing Street says he has the Prime Minister's full confidence.
I told him it had the potential to be a big, bad story, and surely he could see that. He said I was overreacting. I had always been a bit of a Calvinist. So it's a Geoffrey problem, he said. I said it's a Geoffrey problem, but it's also a Peter Grand Panjandrum problem. And it's a GBPM self-destruct at the heart of government problem.
After a week in the spotlight, Mandelson was out of the cabinet.
I felt desperately sad for Peter, who came back in looking wretched. He'd clearly been crying. We were both quite emotional now. How many times had I warned him that what I called his lifestyle ambitions would do for him? His desire to be famous and mingle with the rich and the great and the good. I really felt for him though. We'd had so many moments, good and bad, but when push came to shove, he was still one of the best, and it was a dreadful f***ing waste.
Through my own misjudgment, I have allowed the impression to be created of wrongdoing, and I'm not going to allow that charge to be made against a government which I care more about than anything in the world.
Peter was discovering that Tony could be pretty ruthless when he had to be.
It couldn't get much worse for Bill Clinton, or could it? A key committee of Congress is in session now, deciding whether to release the 4-hour videotape of him answering explicit questions about sex with Monica Lewinsky.
Tony felt Bill was in some genuine trouble, but the only option for us was to stand by him. I asked Cherie if she would stand by Tony if he got involved with a Monica Lewinsky. She said probably, but she'd make his life hell. Tony said he was confident she'd kick him straight out. Fiona would do the same to me.
Clinton's response to the scandal was to turn his attention back to the Northern Ireland peace process.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the United States, Mr. William Jefferson Clinton, and the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Tony Blair.
David Trimble was pretty churlish throughout, and afterwards Bill said to me, someone should tell him that part of the art of politics is smiling when you feel like you're swallowing a turd. Tony said to me later he felt Bill was very down but hiding it well, and also feeling very damaged. A role in the peace process meant a lot to him for lots of different reasons.
The President of the United States tonight stands accused of being a liar and a criminal. The allegations that Bill Clinton is unfit for office are presented in...
When the Special Prosecutor's report is published in all its lurid detail, Clinton barely allows it to dent him.
Tony's call with Clinton went ahead. Considering what was happening around him, he was amazing. It was as if nothing was going on. Tony, hi! If he was acting nonchalant, he did a great job. Then they were on to Northern Ireland and Russia. TB said, re Clinton, of course he can deal with these things, but the question is whether this is what politics has now become. He said if you looked at any sexual relationship in the context of a report like that, it could be made to look terrible. Every leader had to be able to let go a little.
But when it came to Cabinet Minister Ron Davies' self-confessed moment of madness on Clapham Common, Blair didn't hesitate.